There's two things that NBA fans love to do: criticize stars and not pay attention to small market role players. Today, we're going to talk about the most underrated players in the NBA.
Let's glaze, baby.
When you really think about it, what does the word underrated mean?
Oh, okay. We're getting conceptual.
What does it mean to be rated? What does it mean to be overrated? What does it mean? What is love?
I don't know. It's funny because overrated, there's like a handful of people online where when they start talking about a player, I'm like, all right, he's hit the mainstream now. This is too much. But underrated, I don't know. It just feels like when you watch basketball games, there's certain guys that stand out where it's like, hey, this guy's about as good as this other guy that everybody loves and nobody loves this guy. It's almost like a case by case basis. There's not really a standard for like properly rated NBA players. It's very vibes based business.
Yes. It's very based on like the echo chambers we live in and what our Twitter timeline thinks and what we see people get slandered. Some people get hyped. So as you guys see by the title, as you guys heard by the intro, we are going to be ranking the top 10 most underrated players in the NBA today, as far as we think. This is a extremely subjective list based on what we think about players and what we think other people think about players. So your list will be entirely different based on those two factors being different.
Your list will be wrong. That's what he's insulating because you guys don't know ball. That's why you clicked on the video, because you're like, these guys know. I need to form my opinions based on what these guys think. We're here
my
to
opinion
help,
on the
man.
most underrated players has arrived.
Exactly. Next time you're in a conversation, we will give you little bits that you could echo to your friends, and they'll be like, damn, I didn't think about it that way. Wow, this guy's pretty smart. Yeah, you're welcome.
Yep. So obviously, if it was a truly like to the definition of underrated list, that probably means players that nobody knows about from a mainstream level. Yeah. So if we were being truly objective to that, we'd come up here and we'd list like 10 Tari Easons, 10 great role players that nobody talks about.
If you bring up a guy who's not on a two-way contract, you don't know ball.
Exactly.
Much, yeah.
Exactly. 10 Jordan Goodwins.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
That to me is not super interesting to just do that. So I made sure this list has a variety of skill levels. There's some stars on here that we think are over-critiqued. There's some role players on here that we think provide like almost star level value that people don't realize. There's some actual low level players that are just good and people don't know about. So it should be a nice mix of talent levels, have a different variety of conversations.
Yeah. I'll also say it's an interesting conversation to have over and over, because you could like if you asked me in like a month and a half, I'm sure my list could look like really different. Like it doesn't take that much for some of, especially the lower level players. If a low level player shows me like 2 months of good hoops, I'm like, yo, this guy's really coming into his own. Even though that, like when you take a step back and look at the entire season, maybe it's not representative of that level of play. So I think it's fun to just check in every once in a while and be like, hey, who's outplaying their contract a little bit?
Pretty much, yeah. And this will be very different by the time the year ends. It's really based on what's being talked about right now. So we'll jump straight into it. We're going to do how we always do these ranking episodes. I'll go number 10. Jack goes number 9. I go 8, vice versa, until we have the full top 10. Basically, both of us giving you 5 players we think need to be talked about more or in higher regards than they are now. Number 10 on this list, we're going to start off with Josh Hart.
Oh,
I think this is currently, this season, the best role player in the NBA. And Knicks fans understand that. Knicks fans are vying for him to be considered a star, essentially. People were mad he didn't make the All-Star game. Yeah. Which, it was the same thing as that happened with Derek White last year, where a role player is playing so exceptional that their home fan base wants them to be considered par with the stars. Obviously, that's not going to be the case. He's not actually going to make the All-Star team. But I understand where they're coming from. He is truly one of the more impactful players in the NBA this year for a team that is really, really good. I love him with all my heart.
Yeah.
No pun intended.
And it's interesting. The Knicks are almost like the boy who cried wolf a little bit, where it's like every time they get a good player, it's like, this guy fucking rocks. You've never had a player as good as Deuce McBride or whoever. And shout out to Deuce and shout out to everybody. New York has a really good team this year. But when it comes around to having like a legitimate fringe all-star level role player, the way that Hart has been this year, when I hear people say that shit, I'm like, okay, I get it. But then you start digging into like the film and the numbers on what Hart is doing this season. And he is genuinely, like, if you look at the bottom of the All-Star roster, it's like, has that guy been better than Hart this season individually? I don't know. Like, it's been very close.
Yeah, exactly. He is a role player. He is not a star. He is not tasked with star workload. You know, Jalen Brunson and Cat are the guys that really put the offense together. The scoring punch, the playmaking runs through Jalen Brunson's hands.
Yeah.
But there are role players who are so important to their specific scheme that despite not being as talented as the guys above them, are just as important. We talked the last episode about ranking the best big threes in the NBA. You came and you were like, what do people consider to be the third best player on the Knicks? Is it OG Anunoby, one of the best perimeter defenders in the league? Is it Mikal Bridges, the guy that gave up 1,000 first-round picks for, who's a mid-range bucket
getter? He's worth it now. He's worth it now, guys.
Yeah, he's playing well. There you go.
He's come around. He's worth 6 firsts.
The answer is neither. The answer is Josh Hart is by far their third most important player. Some nights he might be second most important player because the offense and defense are super reliant on his play style. He's averaging 14.4 points, 5.7 assists, 9.6 rebounds. At 6'4", 9.6 rebounds, 1.5 steals, and a ridiculous 64% true shooting. He's more efficient than Shai Gilgeous-Alexander this year. And obviously it's because he's averaging 14 points, not 30, so it's a lot easier. But this has not always been
guys.
Josh Hart.
Once they ask his scoring volume to go, that'll scale. It's good.
That's incredible for a third option, averaging 15 points per game. Not only is he an extremely talented defender who has the strength to guard up a little bit, the mobility to guard some shiftier guards, not only is he an amazing defensive rebounder, his playmaking is vital to this team.
Yeah.
That 5.7 assists doesn't tell the full story. A big part of the way they decide to play offense is by him being that rebounding threat, getting 9.6 a game, and pushing the ball in transition. He maybe besides Draymond Green and then the guys like Luka and Jokic, he might be the best transition passer in the NBA this year besides the elite group.
Yeah. And it's important because when you think about the Knicks, a team that relies so heavily on their starting unit, and a team that has been so elite offensively, they don't really have like a Jokic or like a Luka or whatever level passer, even though I think Brunson has taken a step forward as a playmaker this season. And so when you don't have that on the roster and you're running 2 guys who aren't really the best like connective passers in OG and Bridges, like they're much more suited to being play finishers, it's really important that the other 3 guys in the unit are very, very high level passers. And so for Hart to step in and be such an elite connective guy, like you said, I mean, really one of the best transition players in the entire league, from like a scoring and a playmaking perspective. It's instrumental to how good the Knicks have been this year.
The Knicks played the Lakers maybe about a week ago now, and Brunson clamps. He got the Vando jail cell, so that was fine. Cat didn't do much. I was horrified of Josh Hart every single time he ran the ball in transition. He was diming everybody up, attacking the rim. He creates so many looks for others. The team shoots 5% more at the rim with him on the court because he's able to push the ball and set that up for cutters and running on the break. And the beauty of his playmaking is, one, it's not conventional. He's not really running pick and rolls like that. He's getting those 6 assists through transition, through secondary passing, through attacking closeouts and keeping it moving. He has a 1.22 assist to usage ratio, which is 99th percentile. Which basically means he's almost the best in the league at making the most assists at the few touches he has. Just a hyper efficient playmaker.
Yeah. Do you know what he's shooting from 3 on this season?
I do. I'm glad you asked. The next slide I have here, his scoring leak this season. He has been monstrously more efficient than he was last year in every regard. Last year, his effective field goal percentage was 49%. What do you think it is this year?
So you said 64 true shooting. Let me get a 59%.
61.
EFG. Oh, okay. All right.
Without the free throws. His rim shooting went from 64 to 72. That's crazy. That's probably a good amount because of spacing they have now with Cat there. Josh Hart has been excellent at using that and getting to the rim and knifing into those big spacing lanes.
Julius Randle's not in his way.
Precisely.
That's so funny to think about him. His life is just so much easier. He's like, yo, I can just make layups now. This is sick.
No, it's great. His floater range from 33 to 54%. That's massive.
Yeah.
Long mid-range jumpers, 35 to 46. All these like 10 to 20% boosts. It's a crazy scoring leap. And then 3-pointers from 31 to 34.
Yeah. 34 is it's still way better than he was last year, like you just said. I just remember like in the playoffs last year, he was insane. He was like a 40% 3-point shooter, and then he came into this season doing similar stuff, and it was just like, yo, is this just him now? Is like that just like the reality of him as a player? And it's not quite. He's not like 40% reliable as the sample size gets larger, but the fact that he's 34 while doing all of this other stuff at a super high level, and he's like pretty hot hand guy where, like the games he's on, and you need to close out on him. Yeah, he rocks. He's such a fun guy, and he's so. I mean, is there a more like Tibbs-pilled player on the planet than Josh? He's like, I'll play an hour a game. I want to go to triple overtime so I can log as many minutes. Like,
if I don't throw up tonight, I didn't work hard enough.
Yeah,
exactly. If I don't have a hernia at the end of the season, job's not finished.
Yeah. So Tibbs is just fucking. God, I love Josh Hart. Yeah, that rocks. Yeah, and I feel like
the type of guy you want your daughter to bring home to dad.
Whoa. Fuck. I was gonna say, yeah. I just feel like he's very representative of like, I don't know, kind of, especially the identity the Knicks had last year when like, especially after the Randall injury, they really scrapped and they fought and they were a team that won through those means, and that's not their identity this year. But the fact that he still has that play style, it's really important for a team to have a guy or a couple of guys like that. And so, he's doing a really important job for the Knicks.
Yeah, I would kill to have him next to Luka and LeBron. It would be amazing to have a Josh Hart on my team.
Get the jersey swaps going. He played for the Lakers. He was drafted by the Lakers.
He was drafted by the Lakers. Yes.
Yeah, I remember when he was in Portland. I was like, yo, this is someone needs to get him now. Like, this does not make any sense.
Yeah. And we don't acknowledge those Portland years. Those are fake. Doesn't exist.
It's not canon. And then the Knicks got him, and here we are. So yeah, sorry, we can keep it pushing after this. I just remember I had a TikTok where I was like, Josh Hart's the best, like, pound for pound rebounder in the league, and he just commented, thanks. And that's the only time I've ever seen him on TikTok at all. So that killed me.
That's fun.
All right. At number 9 on my most underrated NBA players list, I have Jayson Tatum at number 9.
Lovely. Explain this one.
So this, it's a little difficult to make this case in the moment because he is not playing well right now. I feel like that's why he's gotten underrated. I feel like for a long time, everybody kind of made up their mind that they don't like Jayson Tatum and they don't like the Boston Celtics. And so now that he really isn't playing super well, people are retroactively kind of prescribing this as like the entirety of his player. Where on the season, he is, I believe, 27 points on like 32% from 3 at this point.
No, it's not that bad. 36.
No, 36. It's just that he started the year, the first month of this season, he was literally like 44% on 10 attempts a game. It's one of the craziest like, forward shooting
The playing
stretches.
Poorly thing, you're describing like the last month. So it's a very, very small sample size of him playing poorly. Overall, I think he's having a pretty strong season. So overall, I'm with you. He's underrated. The biggest case for him being underrated is, for some reason, there's stars in the course of NBA discourse every decade that people just don't like. The Joel Embiid factor, where he's always injured. People don't like the way he carries himself, the flopping, the way he does things he says in media.
Because Tatum does none of that.
None of that.
People
exactly.
still just don't like him.
So there's Joel Embiid, where people think you move weird. People think you're a flopper. People think you're never available, and they're sick of seeing you hyped up as a top 2 player in the world. So they hate you. There's Anthony Davis, where LeBron fans are a huge group, and you get hurt, and people perceive you as selling their king. So for 3 years, they hate you, Anthony Davis.
Luka, get ready, bro.
Correct. And then there's people like Jayson Tatum who simply are really good, really unproblematic, and have nothing wrong with them from a moral perspective, from a play style perspective, from a marketability perspective. People just think you're fucking whack, and you can't do anything about it. They think that you're boring, that you're not interesting, that you're not as good as Celtics fans want you to be, and they just decide they're going to prevent your downfall at every turn. Nothing to do with your abilities, nothing to do with anything you've done to deserve this. For some reason, the internet hates you. And that has made him very underrated. People think he's not like really, really good. He's the 5th best player in the world very easily.
Yeah, I saw somebody describe him as like the gateway to MVP conversations, where if you're worse than Tatum, firmly not in the MVP discussion, and if you are better than Tatum, firmly in the MVP discussion. And I feel like that's borne itself out over the past several years, where I would not have argued him for the MVP over the past couple of seasons. Like the angle that you would have to take for that is like he best player on the best team type shit, and I've never really loved that as an argument. But being like people act like he is just straight up ass sometimes. He's straight he can't hit jump shots, and I don't know. It really feels like The Celtics were so good for so long that they hit this rough stretch of 500 basketball, and it's just like the floodgates opened, and everybody's like, "Oh, this is the reality of Jayson Tatum. This is all
your
that
king."
all the 70 wins and the storming to the NBA championship. Nobody pushed them. It literally doesn't count. It's all fake. This is who Jayson Tatum really is. And so, yeah, the only like super statistical shit I wrote down is that. So when Tatum is on the floor this season, they are so when he's on and off the floor, they allow about 111 points per 100 possessions. But when he's on the floor, the effective field goal percentage of the opponent drops by like a full 3 or 4%. And I really think that bears out in the eye test when you start to look at Porzingis not being in the lineup, Jalen Brown, Derek White, and Drew Holiday, especially in this 500-ish stretch of basketball that they've had over the last month or so. All three of those guys have taken really big steps back defensively as far as like not allowing guys to just blow by them. And then they're also running a rotation that features worse defenders than they were last year, where it just felt like last year every player they had on the floor, you literally couldn't score on any of them. Like there wasn't a weak point to attack. And now, I mean, shout out to Cornette, who does the things he does really well as like a rim protector. But there's ways you could go at him. Same with Sam Hauser. Same with Peyton Pritchard. And so I feel like Tatum is just carrying this massive load that people don't acknowledge because this was an elite team last season.
Yeah, he's the first player, star player, best player on the championship team I've seen to not get any type of aura boost when winning a championship.
It's terrible.
People double down on it. You didn't prove shit to us. It was always, you're always there at the conference finals. You made a finals. You can't get it done. You're the best player on the best team. You can't do it. They can't win with you. Then they want them, and they're like, "You still suck." They want because of the
it's
other
the
people.
worst possible way it could happen because he was straight up bad at like shooting the entire time. Like it was a performance that I guess you could make the argument like, oh, well, other guys have played at that level and their teams just weren't good enough to win. And it's like whatever. They still won the title, and then coming off of that into the Olympics, the benching in the Olympics. Oh my God, what an aura nightmare! There's
Discourse
just
heaven. Discourse heaven.
Yeah. So
but see, the thing is though, you're right, because people view him still as like this Kobe prototype, like scorer, that if he's not scoring, he sucks. When the reality is he has a lot of Draymond Green in his game. He does a lot of role player shit that he's exceptional at. I said, again, it's still to me absurd that Jaylen Brown won Finals MVP over Jayson Tatum, who was being double teamed every play and being a masterful playmaker all series, allowing Jaylen Brown to attack one-on-one coverages because Jayson Tatum draws all the attention. The shot wasn't falling. The three-point shot was bad in that series for the first 4 games. I understand it. He also was a weirdly game-changing rebounder, playing those small lineups and being able to negate Boston's size because he's so huge and was killing it on the boards. Is one of those power forwards that can give you elite rim protection while being switchable and guarding 1 through 5 that makes you have a lot of versatility defensively. He's one of the more well-rounded players in the NBA. He doesn't have the scoring highs of a Shea. He doesn't have the playmaking damn sure of a Luka, but he has like a B+ to A- in every category you could want from a player that makes him more elite than all but the 4 guys who win MVPs.
Yeah, it's just an incredibly short list of guys who are as good defensively as he is while being not even just as good a playmaker, like offensive engines at that size. It's very rare to see a guy that size who is like that good of a, just pure driving kick guy, can put his shoulder down.
Some might say he's an anomaly. Some might say his skill set is anomalous.
Hey, lately he's been the normality. That's what I've been calling him. But hopefully
the regularity.
The regularity. So yeah, hopefully at post All-Star break he gets to hang out with Deuce a little bit. He locks in, and we see some real vintage Tatum over the next few months.
All right, next player. Let's stick to a star level player. One more before we get to the role players. At number 8, I have Franz Wagner, who I think is currently the best non-All-Star in the NBA among people who have never made an All-Star because he got hurt this year when he probably would have been on that pace. 25 points. 5.1 assists, 5.6 rebounds. Just well-rounded 25, 5, and 5 guy. That's often like a benchmark for just being a very well-rounded star player. 1.4 steals. He's an extremely good defender. Now, the 3-point shot fell off after the beginning of the year. He's only at 31%. 56.8 true shooting, because he played most of the year, without Paolo. So a little bit higher than league average true shooting right now, or about league average.
within context, to be higher than league average with the way the Orlando Magic have been health-wise, that's impressive. I don't care.
Yes. Only one star on this team has that ability to say they're above league average of efficiency right now.
Damn!
And I think that's why Franz is so underrated. He is extremely underrated right now because this is viewed as Paolo Banchero's team. Franz Wagner, you are the sidekick. And we know why. One's the number 1 overall pick. One's the number 7 overall pick. One is 6'10", can dribble, has a beautiful buttery jump shot, looks the part. One is the other guy who drafted before him, got his chain snatch, is now Paolo's team. That perception has carried all the way through in how these players are viewed. Right now, okay, I gotta figure out the nuance to say this because this is a very interesting conversation between these two players and their relation to each other. Franz is undoubtedly, for these first 3 years them playing together, been the more impactful player. He is undoubtedly currently on par at least with Paolo Banchero. I don't know. He doesn't have the ceiling, I guess, because of the physical tools Paolo has, the skills he has. But right now, he is just as effective. This is way more of a co-star thing than it is a sidekick thing.
Yes.
And many statistical indicators indicate right now that Franz is more effective and the better player. That I don't know how to parse these things because it is hard to understand what to think when you see one person getting the credit, being more talented, and one person just making the team better. It is an interesting conversation to say the least.
Yeah, I think at the bare... So this season, really, it's gone horrifically for the Magic. For Franz PR, I don't know how it could have gone better, and it's surprising that the narrative hasn't shifted more to me because Paolo goes down, and it's everyone's like, this, oh, fuck, this is going to be really tough. We don't know, how are they going to survive? They cement themselves as a top 4 seed for months of the season in the Eastern Conference. They continue just dominating games defensively, and Franz is way, way, way better offensive engine than a lot of people expected. And so coming out on the other side of this, and it's still kind of being I don't even feel like it should be 1A, 1B at this point. To me, taking a step back and looking at each player, I feel like Franz has been better over the past several years. I feel like Franz is better right now. And while I'm not going to use that to prescribe whose team it should be or whatever, just the way that people, and a lot of this, it's not to do with Franz. It's more how people talk about Paolo. I feel like people kind of treat Paolo like he is right now the player that he's gonna be in 3 or 4 or 5 years. And so when they think about him in that capacity, they're like, of course it's Paolo. Paolo's better. He's whatever. When the reality is, especially so comparable offensive players right now, Franz defensively nukes Paolo Banchero.
So good defensively.
He's insanely good. It's crazy.
So there's a lot of biases at play here, I think, of why this conversation is the way it is. Number 1, pick bias, obviously. That goes a long way. Draft bias really shapes how we view every player, whether we like it or not.
Yeah.
And Paolo is good enough right now that he has really, really flashy games where the shot is falling and it pops. So that's why people feel like he's already becoming that player he will be eventually. And his skill sets visually are very good. But the stuff Franz does is a little less flashy, so that leads to getting less.
He's the truest kind of hooper, He's a pure
Franz
basketball guy.
Is a way better playmaker, and that's the big thing. He's a better defender and he's a better playmaker. That leads to when they run the ball through Franz, it leads to better outcomes for everybody else because he is a much better driver. I said it recently on Twitter that if Paolo Banchero had the driving ability that Franz had, then he would be the superstar we want him to be already. Franz has 13.5 drives per game. 69% of those drives result in points, whether it be a shot, field goal from him, a free throw, or an assist. That is straight up very, very, very effective driving and conducive to leading good offense for you and everybody else, right?
Yes.
That bears out in the numbers 1,000,000%. Right, again, the title of this slide is, what do we do? What do we make of this? Because I don't really know how to handle this discourse-wise. When Franz is on the court and Paolo Banchero is off the court, they have a plus 11.4 net rating. 115 offensive rating. That is really good. That is Franz leading your team to blowing teams out. 11.4 net rating is fantastic. When Paolo's on the court without Franz, negative 8.8 net rating. And when they're both on the court together, negative 5.2.
Yeah.
So thus far, Paolo Banchero is an on-off number nuke. He is tanking the numbers compared to Franz. And there's some context here. A lot of the numbers since Paolo came back, he's played more games post-injury than pre because he got injured 5 games in the season. And a lot of these minutes with him on the court and Paolo and Franz off have no Jalen Suggs either. They've had other injuries. Meanwhile, Franz got to play with Jalen Suggs for a lot of stretch. So maybe that helps it somewhat. This has been the case for 3 straight years. This pattern is not just new this year. This is the 3rd year this happening exactly the same way.
Yeah. First of all, playing with Jalen Suggs is a massive advantage. I'm like, Jalen Suggs could have been on this list for me. Like, I feel like his offensive upside is kind of crazy when you watch. But I feel like this is an opinion that if you didn't walk into the season already entertaining or thinking this, it is kind of difficult to be swayed just because of how, like, you could, if someone said none of this is canon from Paolo, he's been hurt the whole time and the core injury is just really weird for like a 6'10" guy.
Might be the case.
I don't really have a rebuttal for that. Like that's fine. The only reason I'm willing to treat this as a little more canon is because it's not even like the negative play from Paolo, who has been ass since he returned from injury. It's more so just like the shit that Franz is showing me in terms of like last year, the past couple of years, the question with him has always been like, oh, okay, well, you know, if Paolo wasn't here and he got this extended stretch of like, I get the ball the whole time, I'm the guy the whole time, what would that look like? Would these cool little bench runs that he goes on, would that scale up into being like a legitimate all-star forward? And this year, those questions have been answered to me. Like he is genuinely probably one of the 20 best players in the league this season, just by what he's done, like on the floor and the way that he's, you know, steadied the ship of a very like shaky Orlando team whenever he's been out there. Yeah,
allow me to show you some nerd shit. I showed you those on-off numbers that are basic on-off. What's happening when you're on the court, offensive and defensive rating-wise versus off, right? There's no context applied. Some of it may be shooting variance. Some of it may be the shooting variance of the players you play with or next to and whatnot.
There's no variance. The Magic are ass. None of them can shoot.
We have this nifty little advanced analytic called a estimated plus minus EPM that applies a lot of contextual factors into these numbers to try to compensate for that variance. They make everybody's shooting more league average, stuff like that, to see if there was no variance whatsoever, who would be the most impactful players in the NBA. Right now, Franz Wagner is number 7 in the NBA in two-way EPM. Number 1 is Shea, then Jokic, Donovan Mitchell, Giannis, Luka, Joel Embiid, Franz Wagner.
Nice. Good.
Again, this nerd shit isn't everything, right? This is this is engaging the most talented players. This is
this one counts. This one counts because
this is everything.
It's the worst when you find a good one and it's like you run it down the list and it's like, okay, Shea, Jokic, Donovan Mitchell, Giannis, George Niang, like you get to a name on the list where it's like, okay, well, I can't use this one. But those names in front, like Franz has genuinely been one of those caliber guys as a two-way player so far this season. And like, I don't know. When Paolo is out there, again, I respect the ceiling of Paolo and everything. It's just he is not a super good defender. He is one of the guys that you can't go at as far as like, if you look around the rest of the Magic team, you're like, do I want to dribble against Jalen Suggs or Franz, or do I want to go against Paolo? Paolo's clearly the answer there. And just being able to run out a roster that has a similar level offensive guy in Franz to Paolo, a better playmaker because the rim pressure just opens up so much different stuff that like the tough mid-range game doesn't really do. And then just a full slate. There's nobody on the floor that you really feel comfortable attacking. It's a different look for the Magic. It's a different look.
And I don't know what the takeaway is here. I'm not saying Franz over Paolo, this is his team, like it's going to be better forever. I'm not even saying that. I'm just saying I'm noticing what has been the reality for the past 3 years. And they're just closer than what people realize. That like, maybe it's a ceiling thing. Maybe it's not. We'll see how it ages over the coming years. But right now, there's not a gap there. And I think people will probably point to the playoffs last year. We've seen Paolo do in the playoffs. We've seen him have monster games. That's commonly pointed to. And what happened in the playoffs is they had a rock fight with another good defense and it was terrible offense. And a big part of that was Franz's shooting last year was horrific. So he was a part of why the offense is bad. We need to stop. I hope Paolo Banchero rises to the playoffs every single year. I hope that is the case. He shot 56% from mid-range during the playoffs. He has never shot above 42% for any period of stretch for his whole career in the regular season. So good for him for rising to the level. That is the definition of shooting variance. Maybe he does it again. We'll see. For now, I'm not going to pretend 7-game sample size defines a player, whether good or bad for either of them. So
Yeah.
I'm not buying that argument when it's this small of a sample. If we have like 3 years of Paolo continuously becoming the most nuclear shooter of all time in every playoff series ever, then sure, maybe he's just goated. For now, I would just think about this and watch the rest of the season and see how it progresses, see how both these players play, and just think about it.
I would be so pissed. Like, if I was a Magic fan and we got 5 years of like Paolo, literally best shooter alive in the postseason, and then the regular season every year, he's back to like 38% on these fucking jab step settling pull-up jumpers. I would be like, can we get some of that in the regular season, which we haven't seen. Yeah. Yeah. I guess the last thing I'd say is that to the Paolo crowd, the first 5 games, healthy Paolo this season, that's the kind of offense, that's what you're talking about, where like if he had the driving of Franz, he really did in those first 5 games. He did not settle at all in these tough twos, and he used his physicality really well to get to the rim. And even though I think he is a worse passer than Franz, he's still very capable of making like the corner kickouts or whatever when he's directly under the rim and the defense has collapsed. And so that guy that we saw was sick. And if we see him again, yeah, this is totally a conversation. But right now, I do like Franz more. Yeah.
And that's why the ceiling is there, because we've seen him for those 5 games. If that player comes around, it's about consistency, not ability with Paolo. It's about can you put these things together full time? And I think there will be a year where he does. Right now, there needs to be some recalibration of playing a little more through Franz's playmaking until we get to that point, I think.
Okay. Yeah. All right. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of the Orlando talk. Let's go to number 8.
7?
All right, we're getting into the nerd. Oh, number 7. My fault. I can't count. The nerd shit here. Andrew Nembhard, the savior of the Indiana Pacers defense, the 2025 January Defensive Player of the Month, Andrew Nembhard. Yeah, I love Andrew Nembhard. The Pacers were the number 3 defense for the entire NBA over the course of January, as they went 10-2 over that stretch. That's in large part due to Andrew Nembhard's insane ability on that end of the floor. On the season, the Pacers defense allows 9.5 fewer points per 100 possessions, with a nearly 4% drop in opponent effective field goal percentage when Nembhard is on the floor. Him and Siakam's numbers both look like that, but nobody else on the Pacers does. Like they have been playing insane defensively, and Nembhard has been playing out of his mind. It is fucking crazy. Since December 6th, which is when Nembhard returned from injury full time. I think he played like a couple games before that with wishy-washy minutes. Indiana's 19-7 since December 6th. They have the 7th best defense in the entire NBA, while having pretty middle of the pack like paint stuff. Like their opponent field goal percentage in the restricted area and their opponent field goal attempts in the restricted area are both like 14th, 15th caliber stuff. And so they really rely on just causing mayhem out on the perimeter, creating a lot of havoc and using it to get out in transition and generate easy offense. That's been the bread and butter for this incredible run by Indiana, in addition to like play from other players. But I would put Nembhard here.
Nembhard is similar to Josh Hart in that he's not the 2 star players on the team, but a very specific area that he impacts the game, like defines their ceiling and has a outsized impact compared to his talent level. He is their perimeter defense in the same way Josh Hart is their transition offense with the Knicks. Yeah. When you have someone like Tyrese Halliburton out there who is not a good defender, it is imperative that you have a lockdown 2 guard next to him that can be the main point of attack defender, can fight over screens in your drop coverage where you want to keep Miles Turner around the rim, can just be the guy that applies ball pressure and makes life difficult for opposing guards and tries to force turnovers to get you running in transition and use that speed of your offense. Nembhard is by far the most talented guy. Like, it is night and day when he's on the court versus when somebody else is in that role.
Yeah. And so I think where the underrated part comes in for me a little bit is we keep coming back to like narratives and discourse and the things that the way we see people talk about teams. And I see people talk about Indiana as like, okay, they have Halliburton, they have Siakam, and then they have a bunch of good guys on top of that form a really competent basketball team. For me, I do separate. I'm like, okay, they have Halliburton, they have Siakam, they have Nembhard, and then they have a bunch of good guys after that. Like I really do feel like Nembhard is that level of on ball, just disruptive defender, maybe like a tier below like the Carusos, the Dyson Daniels of the
Mhm.
world. But I mean, for the name recognition here, like I feel like people talk about him as just kind of a promising young guy, when in reality, one of the best perimeter defenders in the entire NBA this season.
Yeah. Is that like they also have Aaron Nesmith, who's a very good defender, but
Yeah.
he's a corner sitter offensively. Nembhard gives you that defense and also gives you secondary playmaking. His 5 assists a game are nothing to sneeze at. He also has a shooting ceiling where we saw in the playoffs last year when he went fucking nuclear and had the offensive stretch
God,
where
what
he
a
was just
guy.
a bucket. That hasn't been consistently the case, but he has that ability with the ball in his hands to create for himself and others that you don't see a ton of players who are like the most important defensive guard in a team and they're a secondary playmaker that can do things next to Tyrese Halliburton or without him. Like that's just a unique type of player that gives you some like really impressive two-way ability and some really interesting things you can do with your lineup where you have a guy that can be your defensive 2 guard and your backup point guard. That's pretty hard to find.
Yeah, and it's important just because of like Indiana's entire approach to offense. Everybody on the floor has to be a good passer at the bare minimum for Indiana to really function the way that they do. But specifically Nembhard, I feel like he is often the way Halliburton passes the ball right away after an advantage has been created. I often feel like Nembhard is the guy. So like Halliburton makes the initial decision and then it'll be Nembhard catching the ball and he'll make like the supplementary decision on whether or not you need to attack the closeout and get like a lob to Turner or swing it to the corner or whatever. I feel like he provides just like the perfect fit next to Halliburton in terms of like, I'll step back, you could do you, and then when it's my time to step up in a much more limited role, I will fill it out very effectively while making up for your shortcomings on the defensive end.
Yeah. All right. That's enough Nembhard talk. Let's talk about the guy that just pieced him up for his career high 45 points. At number 6 on this list, we have Austin Reaves.
Oh my God.
Again, you know he's on a team that no one pays attention to, that it's like a tax against him for being a Laker where nobody cares about you. Nobody watches your games. Everyone's automatically thinks you're trash, small market nonsense, whatever. Austin Reaves is really good.
Yeah. I never hear about this guy. Yeah, it's crazy.
No, I'm joking. But I do think that the Lakers have had a lot of players over the years, role players that, by playing for the most popular team in the league, by playing for the team with the most fans, get gassed and get overrated. And I think there has been a kind of assumption by non-Lakers fans out there that Austin Reaves is another one of those overrated players, especially because the Russell Westbrook years, he was good, but wasn't like blowing your socks off or anything. Like he had some years where the talk was, oh, the defense isn't good. This guy is blah, 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 blah. People assume he's overrated. He has proven this year without a doubt he is not overrated. He has really gotten better and better every year while the touches have scaled up. He's maintained elite efficiency, really good, underrated playmaking. He is truly underrated because people assume he's gassed by Lakers fans, but I promise you he's not. The hype is deserved this time. He is one of the more impressive third options in the NBA this year.
Yeah, no, I've been seeing this. I mean, this is the narrative now. Is like who has a better third option than Austin Reaves?
And I'm doing my hardest to perpetuate it. I want to make sure everybody notices.
It's an extremely short list. It's like okay, Garland, sure, and then like maybe like Derek White or whatever, but like he's immediately in the conversation of like
it's like Garland, J-Dub.
Yeah, like pretty much every other J-Dub. Okay, maybe we're talking different, but like this is offensively, at least, he's just so good. Like really incredible scalable playmaker where obviously the 45 against Indiana that you just talked about, he can go on the ball and he can cook and he can do his dumb little herky jerk stop and start driving stuff that he loves to dominate with. Or he can take a step back and he could be like, okay, once Luka or LeBron, whoever swings it to me, I can attack the closeout. I can be an incredibly competent supplementary decision maker. While I can make passes, I can finish all that shit. I mean Reaves, I don't love him, but I respect how good he is.
Yeah. So again, I'm cheating a little bit because people are starting to notice. So this is like if this was 2 months ago, I think he'd be super underrated. Now with the Luka stuff, I think people are starting to realize like, damn, they got 2 of these white boys. They're gonna be unstoppable. The insane advantage they have of being able to not only stagger Luka and LeBron to be on the courts at all times, but have Reaves be part of that staggering and have potentially two elite playmakers on the court at all times.
Especially when you talk about like Luke. I mean, okay, even if Luka's 100% in shape, LeBron still needs rest.
Yeah.
So just the ability to be like, LeBron, take a seat. LeBron, you can go. We're good.
Yeah.
Austin Reaves has arrived. That kind of thing.
Exactly. He's an elite foul drawer. He does all the baiting stuff. He knows exactly how to get defenders into the lane, to do the arm running up. He loves to get into the lane, get the arms on him, do the rip through things that Harden does, and like finish it with this like leaning back mid-range like toss up that seemingly always goes in for and ones. It's beautiful to see. Like you said, the step back jumper has been there from 3. The playmaking has been outrageous. 6.1 assists a game. It's going to give you a lot of line of versatility as JJ Redick to have these multiple ball handlers that can be good on or off ball. I don't see how you're going to stop this offense, and it's obviously because of Luka as a starting point, obviously because of LeBron James being one of the better second playmakers you could possibly imagine in history, but it's also because Austin Reaves kind of combines that three-headed dragon.
Yeah, and it's crazy. It feels like there hasn't been that much where, like, if they had closed out this season with the Luka trade doesn't happen or whatever, I feel like the Reaves PR would have exploded by the end of the year. But there's been like a month. I don't even remember when they traded D'Lo, but like, so they move off of D'Angelo Russell, and I feel like that's a really good representation of like, okay, 2 guys averaging like 15, 5, and 5. One of them is good, one of them is bad, and so they moved off of the bad one. And now they like all of those touches flooding to Austin Reaves. Like I really thought he was going to explode in the second half of the season, and I think he still will to some degree, just because he still won't be sharing minutes with D'Lo. His job will be a lot easier, and then playing off of Luka and LeBron, like he'll just be able to make like I don't know, like
they
simple
just beat
stuff.
the shit out of the Pacers with no LeBron, no Luka. Obviously, Anthony Davis isn't there anymore. A bunch of role players, 1 center, and Austin Reaves going sicko mode. 45 points from him, career high. Like, he has it in him to lead teams to wins. Like, it's an insane luxury to have. And I understand everybody wants to hate the Lakers. I don't blame you. I would too if I wasn't on the winning team. This one is not gassed. This one is serious. He is better than people realize.
Yo, I do genuinely hope. I hope the Hornets force you guys to take Mark Williams now. I hope Mark Williams pulls up to Staples Center in like a fucking wheelchair.
Full body cast.
Yeah. He's like, hey guys, I'm ready to start. And you're like, oh sweet. All of our tradable firsts and Dalton Connect for this guy.
He runs up the court with the limp.
I hope Charlotte's on the phone right now. You're taking him. We're done. It's over. Yeah. So yeah.
All right, man, who's number 5 on this list?
At number 5, I have Santi Aldama. I know it's the name that everybody was waiting to pop up on this list. It's Santi Aldama,
mentioned,
baby.
Santi mentioned.
Shout out to Santi, man. The Memphis Grizzlies have been one of the best teams in basketball despite having an extremely up and down season health-wise. Jaren Jackson Jr. has been the biggest driving reason for this, but one of the supplementary reasons has been Santi Aldama, maybe the most productive player in the NBA, playing less than 25 minutes per game. Only he and Gafford average at least 12 points and 6 rebounds in under 25 minutes with like a funky game restriction. Mark Williams averages like 20 and 10 in 25 minutes, but he never plays, so it doesn't count. Future Laker, baby. He is second on the team in double doubles, and he is 4th on the team in 20-point performances so far this season. He's been incredible. He's a really, really funky offensive problem with the super weird combo of size and agility, and his game, it's not as scalable as like Austin Reaves or something. You're not gonna like just hand him the ball for an entire game, be our initiator, be our decision maker or whatever. But as far as like bursts off the bench or whatever, like real role player shit, it does scale incredibly well. He's really good on and off the ball.
Yeah, no, he's on this list because of name recognition. Because simply put, this is the definition of an underrated player. He is very good, and nobody at home that isn't a sicko knows about him. He is slept on. He has the tax of being a European player that makes average American fans not know he exists. He has the tax of playing behind stars, playing in a small market. A lot of things going against him to get recognition, but everything you said is facts. He is incredibly unique, and again, we keep getting back to a lot of the running theme on these underrated players lists is it gives you line of versatility, because that's one of the more valuable things in the NBA is can a coach deploy you in multiple ways and unlock really hard just styles of play for teams to deal with because of you? That's the definition of Santi Aldama. He can guard a lot of positions in this unique Memphis offense where they don't run a lot of pick and rolls and really require all their players to be able to drive really well and attack multiple types of defenders and create advantages. Santi Aldama is fantastic at just not being able to be stayed in front of from defenses.
Yeah. Quick, you said not a lot of like pick and rolls. I would like you to take a guess what percentile pick and roll player you think Santi Aldama is. I'll give you a hint. It's really bad.
Ball handler?
A roll man. My fault.
Roll man. So as far as his effectiveness as a roll man, I don't know, 11. I don't think he really does it very often.
He's first percentile. 1.4 percentile is our guy, Santi Aldama.
What volume of his shots is that? Like 2%?
Oh yeah. He's probably run like 30 all season or something. Yeah. Like it doesn't happen at all, but he is really bad at it, which is why it's still crazy that he's a super effective off-ball player. He's a really good cutter and like a dependable lob threat. He is like a pretty legit 7 feet tall, I'm pretty sure. Like he's just like a huge guy. And in addition to that, he shoots 37% on catch and shoot threes. So he's really good at like when someone else is driving the basketball, he is very good at like recognizing the angle of attack, like the smartest way that they're going to move through the defense and setting himself up to be in the perfect position to play off of that. He's really good at relocating after a drive on a catch and shoot three, really good at like setting himself up for anybody to throw a lob to him. And then he's
who
also
else good at those things?
Who?
Jaren Jackson Jr. You know how hard it is to have. Maybe you have a 7-footer like Edie out there who already you demand to put your biggest player on him. You got to put your second biggest player on Jaren Jackson, running around, cutting, shooting, have someone tall enough to contest those shots, and then you got to put your third biggest player on Santi Aldama, who does all those things well as well. That is a matchup nightmare. Like to require that much size and activity from a defense is just really, really hard to deal with.
Yeah, and that's why it's like a very symbiotic relationship, because if you put Aldama in position for him to just play against guys his size, it's not like the perfect spot for him. He could do it well because he is still super agile and everything for a guy who's 6'11", 7 feet tall. But when he gets to go against smaller guys, I feel like he really shines because he is dependable enough dribbling the basketball. He doesn't do a ton of crazy moves that exposes the ball to being poked away by smaller defenders. And then in the paint, I love him as a passer. I think he's one of the best passers as far as like big to bigs go. And then he's also like an extremely dependable hub. If you run him at the elbow, he can hit cutters and shooters all over the floor, even though he only averaged 2.6 assists off the bench in 25 minutes is low-key volume.
Low-key volume. He pretty much has like Hall of Fame dimer badge if you think about it.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to do too much. He doesn't want to show too much because then it's not fair to the other people. He takes too much shine. He just
he's humble. Classic European humility, baby. Oh man.
Why need assists plus points? It's not fair to everybody else.
Other than that, I don't know. I just wanted to shout him out. Once you get into the role player guys, it really is just like being like, I like this guy, and then everyone else being like, yeah, he's good. Yes. And then we move on.
Yeah, exactly. He's the definition of underrated player, like I said. Next up on this list, let's go to a guy who has name recognition. Currently, for all the worst reasons, though, I'm going to a guy who I think is simply too hated. The hate outweighs the actual impact on the game, or let me not say that, but outweighs how good he actually is and valuable he actually is long term. Number 4, I have Jordan Poole.
This is such a good nod. Oh my god.
I think Jordan Poole is currently talked about as if he's one of the worst players in the league because he's on a terrible team. He got shipped out of Golden State and sent to Washington to die. And last year was really rough. He was hilariously inefficient. It did not go well for him. He was kind of playing this like off-ball 2 guard next to Malcolm Brogdon, and it was just a mess. The team was a mess. He clearly had to deal with some off-the-court stuff in this whole transition to this new team.
I mean,
wasn't good for the PR. This year, he's really good. He's a point guard now. Malcolm Brogdon's gone. He is really shining, I think, as a shooter, as a slasher, and as a passer. Don't ask what his mid-range numbers look like. Don't ask what percentile he's in as a mid-range shooter. It's second percentile.
Guys,
I said don't ask.
That's inefficient hoops. We're playing analytic ball, people. Come on.
Don't ask. But he shoots 67% at the rim, 38% from 3, 5 assists a game on a team that has almost no good offensive players. I think he's shown this year that he's back to being that player he was in Golden State. He's just has skills that will translate if he's ever in a winning environment again. And it's just time to stop talking about him as like some disaster class. Like, he is a good player in a bad situation, but he is still that good player.
Yeah. This is one of those moves where post-trade, it felt like people lumped him into like the DeAndre Ayton caliber post-trade player, where it's like he's like if he ever plays like mildly winning basketball again, it'll be a fucking shock. And he was not good last year, but this year, I mean, he has blown away my expectations as far as like a comeback season goes. It's an incredibly short list of guys who are shooting the basketball as well as he is. I think maybe like 6-7 guys shooting 40% on over 8 attempts a game. He's one of them. And then I just don't know if there's a player whose like flow, whose emotions affect their game as much as Poole does. Like, he plays the game with so much joy and so much fluidity that coming into a new season where he's very unsure of his role, honestly probably questioning like his entire NBA career up to this point with the way that like the Golden State Warriors shipped him out and their whole relationship ended. And so last year the confidence was clearly shook a little bit. He's come into this year, I mean, firing on all cylinders, and it's been incredibly fun to watch. Like, the Wizards suck, but him individually, so good.
Awesome. And like, I could see a world where like they're far from who they'll be as a team, right? But I like the building blocks of Sarr and Coulibaly being your versatile defenders, and Jordan Poole being the offense. They got to figure out the two guys around that'll make that like a good, well-rounded team one day. But I don't know if he's a lead guard, but he is one of the guards of the Washington Wizards that can be built around for a while. I kind of view him like play style wise as like a diet Damian Lillard and how he's currently playing and like using his playmaking. It all starts obviously with the shooting ability off the dribble and off the catch, 38%, pretty similar to what Dame does, and like the volume of threes is pretty similar. And he's really good at using that shooting gravity to slash. Like I said, 67% at the rim is very good for a guard of his size and stature. And then this year, he's really put together the playmaking out of that slashing. That's kind of how Damian Lillard does it, is make you come outside of the shot, I'll slash to the rim and kick out to shooters. I'm not throwing these intricate passes, skip passes to the corners, throwing all these crazy lobs like Luka manipulation, but I know how to use my gravity as a shooter, slasher, and passer. That's how Jordan Poole's been playing this year.
Yeah, and I also would like to, as someone who follows the Wizards way more closely than like a healthy person should, I would like to shout him out as like an extremely good locker room presence for a very young team. I think this season we saw Kuzma was straight up a dick, like on camera at points. Like, he would come into post-game press conferences and be like, yeah, I'm kind of sick of fucking babysitting. Like, I hate playing with all these like loser French dumb baby young guys. And
damn, Kaishan George is annoying. Why is he so young?
Yeah,
Fuck.
why is he taking my minutes? I'm trying to play 40 a game. Jordan Poole has not been that at all. Like he has very clearly stepped into this locker room as a guy who's been around the league a little bit. I mean, if the locker room's full of 19-year-olds, then yeah, Jordan Poole's a vet for sure.
Elder statesman.
Yeah, he's won a championship. He's done all of this stuff at a super high level, and it feels like he has really stepped up and just, I don't know, given everybody like a good role model to look towards as far as like, hey, if you work like I do, you can stick around in the league. Like, there's no guarantee you'll be a star, but yeah. So I mean, I've loved his season. One of the best bounce back years in the NBA for sure.
Yeah. And again, this is I mentioned up top, there's a variety of reasons, styles of player, scaling of skills on this list for why we're considering someone underrated. This is all about perception. That it's just, he's not trash, I promise. He is a good player still.
Yeah. Okay. Somebody on the other side of that spectrum, I guess. We're going from like someone like fell off hard and now they're coming back up. This is someone who hadn't even had an opportunity to fall off yet. Okay. And now they are super duper on the upswing as far as PR goes. I have one Toumani Camara from the Portland Trail Blazers.
One of the best kept secrets of NBA sickos.
Ooh, it's to the point where like I was making this list and I was like, everybody that you and I talk to loses their mind over Toumani Camara. But if you pull somebody off the street, they'll be like, is that like a car brand? What is this? Like, I've never even heard of Toumani Camara. In 2025 so far, Toumani is 12.6 rebounds, 2 assists, and 2 combined steals and blocks on 59% true shooting. He's playing 35 minutes per game, which is up from 30 minutes per game before this stretch. In that span, Portland has the 3rd best defense in the entire league. And it's largely in part, they have a lot of good defenders. Shout out like Donovan Clingan and a couple other guys. But Camara like really stands out as just like a floor altering defender. And yeah, he's just had an incredible season so far.
No, he's having like an all defense caliber stretch. So like he's not just a good defender, not just a good defender for a young player. He has been a legitimately great defender. And over the past like 12 games or whatever it has been since the Trailblazers have gone on this like weirdly out of nowhere January winning stretch.
Yeah.
It's because Ayton's playing better. That's part of it. They bench Ayton Sharp and they have a little more, I guess, balance with their guard rotation right now. Scoot's having some good games. Simons is cooking a little bit better without Sharp next to him in a full-time capacity. But I think the biggest thing is their wings have just been outrageous. Denny is one of the... Denny should probably be on this list. I just kind of forgot about him, but he's routinely referred to as one of the most underrated players in the league, and that's been the case this year. After the horrific start, you're fully seeing the capabilities of him as a driver and playmaker.
The ITF super soldier. That's what they call him.
Neither here nor there.
I had to get it off. Hey, we're like an hour in. Okay, so no, if you show this to somebody important, they won't make it here.
Yeah, so the more like Toumani Camara matches that defensive intensity that Denny brings, and having that combination of those two on the wing, plus Ayton's playing better, plus Clingan is one of the best minute per minute defenders in the league coming off the bench. Those four players alone give you a lot of defensive value that has really made this team competent. This is kind of like what we just mentioned with Jordan Poole, but to an even greater degree, where the Blazers they've had a good stretch. Maybe they'll keep it going and this is wrong, but they're not a full-time good team yet. When they get good, I promise you Toumani Camara will be part of that. When this team is finally at a place where they have their surefire guard, surefire creator of the future, whoever that is, and they're in the playoffs, they're making something happen, they have their star players, I can assure you Toumani Camara will be one of those supporting players that help define playoff series.
Yeah, I would implore, like, if you want a good representation of it, I was watching film of his, and I watched, they had an overtime win against the Phoenix Suns a few weeks back, and he's so good at defense that often opposing teams don't even ask him to play defense, where they stuck him on Devin Booker in the fourth quarter and overtime of this Suns win, and Booker scores 6 points on 2 of 6 shooting in those periods or whatever. But more importantly, the Suns just completely removed Booker from the action at all. Like, Booker stood in the corner for long, like entire possessions, entire stretches of basketball. If he didn't get the ball in transition and like try to beat them down the floor so that the defense couldn't get set, he was not involved in the action because the Suns were like, hey, if we're bringing Toumani Camara into this pick and roll, we're not generating an advantage. No matter who he gets put onto, like, we are worse off as a team because of that. And I feel like that's an incredible testament to his just like versatility too, because like if you're running like Booker and KD and you do like a little screen and roll or pick and pop with them or whatever, that's two guys who are not just great, they're incredibly different. It's just you need to be an incredibly versatile guy to stick on both of those guys super firmly. And the Suns were like, hey, Toumani is that guy. We're not going at him.
Again, another player that I would kill to have on my favorite team playing next to my star players and Luka and LeBron. The perfect guy you want next to stars. When the Portland Trailblazers get their guys, like they're superstar players that'll lead their team, Camara will be a household name as one of the best role players in the league.
The most frustrating guy to have on a bad team, where you watch them get like fucking washed by 18, and it's like, yo, Toumani was crazy tonight though. If they had some offensive guys, this would be crazy.
Okay. Number 2 on this list. Let's transition back to the other side of the ball. I am once again cheating because this is a player that you tell me if I'm allowed to call him underrated. This is an all-star starter. This is somebody who I think is considered a top 20 player in the league. I just think he's a top 10 player in the league without a doubt. Number 2, I got Jalen fucking Brunson. This is a player who this season, wind it back. Beginning of last season, he was a very good player, had made an all-star leap, was still on the come up after coming to New York. And I think last season in the playoffs, he showed that, oh no, I'm not just a guy who can sneak into an all-star game. I'm not just the bench player turned starter who can clearly handle more. I'm one of the best scorers in the fucking league. He put on routinely 40-point game after 40-point game after there was a narrative, not even necessarily a narrative, a commonly believed sentiment that while he's really good, hard to imagine him carrying a team through playoff series as the only playmaker on the Knicks because of his size, because of his playmaking limitations. You can just imagine a world where we throw double teams at him and, suddenly he's less effective because there's too much asked of him. That was not the case whatsoever. He dominated every look you threw at him. You cannot double team him. He'll get to a spot. He'll continue to be an incredibly resilient, high volume scorer. So that happened last playoffs, and he clearly made that leap. What did he do this season? His team acquired Karl Anthony Towns, who was having a great scoring year. Shout out to Cat. I'm not diminishing him in any way. But in the first 2 weeks of the season, there was this dumbass phenomena that happened where everybody in the NBA world, from a casual fan perspective, decided that Cat is now their best player and that Big Bodega is leading the Knicks. And what Jalen Brunson did is quietly be one of the best scorers in the league still, 26 points per game on 60% true shooting, while also having the best playmaking year of his career, 7.5 assists. He is that player he was in the playoffs while now being a better passer, proving his scales next to another star that he's helping make his life easier for in Cat. This is without a doubt a top 10 player in the world to me. And while he is considered really good, is considered top 20, whatever, is considered to be caliber enough to be an all-star starter, I don't know if there's necessarily the recognition that this is one of the best superstars in the league. You could say he's like 7th or 8th in the world right now, and it's not crazy.
Yeah, it is interesting because everything that you said was true as far as like Cat comes in and everybody kind of gets obsessed with the new part of the team, the new parts of the team. And in conjunction with that, they had a really rough start to the season as well, especially like one of the new things that everyone was obsessed with was Mikal Bridges. And so I feel like we come off the playoffs last year, Brunson pretty unanimously top 10. Like nobody was like, you could argue him super duper high and there weren't really that many counter arguments to it. And then we come into this year, the Knicks have that weird rocky start where you get both the Karl Anthony Towns super duper PR leap and the Knicks as a whole. Should they have given up all those picks for Mikal? Just like a lot of different discourses around it. And lost in the shuffle is all of that aura, that motion that Brunson farmed in the playoffs last year. And so now we're kind of on the other side of that storm where the Knicks are playing really good basketball. The hierarchy of the team is very firmly established. And Mikal Bridges has, evened out into a really, really solid tertiary player. And so I think at this point, Brunson's, ratedness has kind of rebounded a little bit into appropriate, but it definitely doesn't feel like a guy who was like a walking 40-point game in last year's.
Like, I think it's because he is not really considered one of the like superstars of the league or like faces of the league or like young stars of the league, whatever. Yeah. He's never thought of in that way. And I think for a few reasons, he started off as a bench player. He started off being sidekick to Luka and kind of had a weird development to being the star. And people, it's kind of like the Austin Reaves thing too, where people like think it's New York bias and don't want to give it to him too much. But he is like as good as almost everybody. I mentioned
New York bias when I shoot 80% on like tough twos. New York bias, man. Damn.
I know. But like he's been easily one of the most impactful offensive players in the league this year. We look at offensive EPM. Number 1, Nikola Jokic. Number 2, Shea. They're both +7. Clear-cut MVP caliber players, right? So there's a reason that one of those two will win it. After that, you have Steph Curry, +5.6. Obviously, just walking gravity. He's been talked about for over a decade.
Poor guy. Shout out to Jimmy, man, for fucking saving that guy. It was so nasty, dude.
Number 4 on this list is Jalen Brunson. He is currently grading out as the 4th most impactful offensive player in the world. And to me, that matches the eye test. I think a lot is made of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander being just a unstoppable force of slashing, mid-range shooting, getting to his spots against any defense, infallible scorer, right? That can lead your offense despite not necessarily being a top-tier playmaker. I view Jalen Brunson as kind of the diet version of that. I think he plays in that same way where the scoring is what things are built off of instead of passing like some of the other more traditional point guards in the league right now. And it's the fact that you cannot stop him. He will get to his spots that really starts a lot of chain reactions for the offense. Like, he is close to that same level. Obviously, Shai's much better. He's the superstar MVP, but Brunson is the next tier of that caliber player. Yeah,
I will say, so Becky Hammon is the quote that you were talking about earlier where she said Jalen Brunson will never be 1A on a championship team because he's too small. And I was pretty vocal online about agreeing with that fact. And I think I'm not sure how I feel about it now, but it is a testament to how well Brunson played that I'm even entertaining the idea of like a 6'2" tough offense type of guard being a guy who can lead you to a championship, because I don't like those kinds of players. So to be like completely blatant about my biases, like I feel positionless basketball, I want everybody to be 6'8", 6'10", whatever. Like it feels like the kind of player that maybe is being phased out of basketball a little bit, but he is so good that he forces you to entertain these conversations. It's like, hey, every step of the way he's been doubted, every step of the way he has blown people's expectations out of the water. And so if I'm doubting him again, it's like I'll probably just look stupid in a couple of months. He's been insane.
98th percentile as a pick and roll player, 97th percentile in isolation, 97th percentile in spot up. So you can also do it off ball. Yeah. He is just truly one of the best scorers in the NBA while being a very good passer. Don't ask about the defense. We're not talking about that.
Don't worry about it.
Don't ask. I mentioned offensive EPM on purpose. I didn't mention defensive EPM or overall EPM. Don't fucking ask. He's one of the best offensive players in the league. Probably top. Where does he rank among point guards? Like, how high can we rank Jalen Brunson among point guards in the NBA?
Oh my God. Incredibly high.
Incredibly, right? Like, if we're going to go Shea and Luka as 1 and 2, whatever order you want, I'll go Luka 1 because I'm right. Number 3, do we have a conversation?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I feel like you do. I feel like by the end of this season, now that Steph has a little help, I want to see it play out a little more, because, I mean, the resurgence he's had lately, he's had like 3 or 4 straight 30-point games. He nearly dropped 40 last night. Really looked like a rejuvenated player.
Jimmy's going to allow Steph to look like Steph again. So I'm okay going Steph at 3 to give the most impactful offensive player the nod. I think Jalen Brunson has to be 4 then.
I would firmly put Brunson at 4. There's not, I mean, maybe there's a name that like we're forgetting where it's like, oh, that's like Brunson knocks so hard on like the superstar door for me. Like he nearly transcends like the all-star title into just, I mean, one of the most unstoppable offensive players in the league when he has it going.
Yeah, and he's the best scorer at the position besides Shea and Luka.
Yeah, definitely. And I would highlight at the end.
Don't ask about the defense.
Stop bringing it. It's not important, guys. You're worried about so much dumb stuff all the time. This is why you don't know
Grow
ball.
Up. Grow up.
I would also highlight that at the end of the playoffs, I was worried about his ability to scale his game back. In like last year, it was like this massive volume offense where it's like we don't have any option but to force feed Brunson the ball and hope he saves our lives. And he dominated that way. I was curious as to whether or not he would be able to adjust his offense to account for playing with like an all-star level big man, multiple all-star-ish level wings, all that shit. Those worries, I mean, they were like I've completely solved. He's looked so good this season.
Okay, so for finishing this top 5 point guards, who would be number 5? Because like Trae Young is having an inefficient season. LaMelo Ball fell off the crazy start. John Morant isn't comfortable in the offense there, really. Mm-hmm. Is it Cade Cunningham? Damian Lillard is having a good year? For
me, it's between Cade or Darius Garland. I'm not the biggest Dame guy in the world. Shout out to Dame.
He's having a great year. He's having an amazing year.
He is having a good year. For me, it's between Cade and Darius Garland, though. I would probably... this season alone, I would give Cade the nod. But expanding, I'd like Ja here or whatever, like guys who need a little bit more health to get back into these talks, that would be fine. But yeah, this year, I would go Cade.
What a come up for Cade Cunningham. You love to see it.
Shout out to Cade, dude. Oh my God. Shout out to, I mean, getting to not play with Killian Hayes anymore. What a fucking like burden lifted off your shoulders. That must be so crazy. All right.
And not playing for a coach that insists on starting him over Jaden Ivey.
That must have been so crazy in like the huddle. All right. Killian's starting again tonight. Just a collective. Okay. All right. Let's go, Pistons.
You have Cade looking at Jaden like fucking Jim from The Office to side eye.
Yo, this guy's kind of bad. All right.
Hammers.
Okay. Last guy for the whole video. Last guy on my list. Oh my God. What a player. Trey Murphy of the New Orleans Pelicans. He's tall. He's lengthy. He's incredibly athletic, and he's having an incredible shooting season. Are you locked into Trey? The Pelicans have been bad. How do you feel about him?
I adore him with all my heart, and I have for the past year and a half, since early last year when I finally like my eyes were opened. I was like illuminated to a new like sense of almost religious faith in Trey Murphy.
Yeah.
And just how good he is, and just how much I wanted Brandon Ingram to be traded. Not because Brandon Ingram is not good, not because I dislike him or his game at all, but because Trey Murphy needs to be freed and allowed to be a full-time starter. Because the idea of Trey Murphy and Herb Jones being the two wings long-term next to Zion Williamson makes my heart explode with so much joy. The level of shooting ability this guy has and the level of creation he has attacking closeouts with his stiff-ass dribbles, I love it. It looks so funny and so up and down and is so effective. This is one of my favorite role players in the league. If he's even a role player anymore. He's quickly ascending past that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. He, like, the shooting season that he's having really cements him as, it's like the ideal wing pairing, really. If you could build two wings in a lab to play off of a star, it would be you have one of the best defenders in the league, and then you have one who's still incredible defensively, but really spaces the floor. Trey, this season, averaging just under 23 points per game while shooting 38% on 8.6 three-point attempts. The other guys in the NBA who are averaging 20 points while shooting 38% on that volume are Anthony Davis, Anthony Edwards. Yo, Nico Harrison was right. Oh my God.
Genius.
No, Anthony Edwards, Damian Lillard, Donovan Mitchell, Tyler Hero, Steph Curry, and CJ McCollum. And so it's just guards. It's just all-star level guards, really. I mean, shout out to CJ, but the rest of them have been or will be an all-star at some point. And so then you also have this 6'8", incredible, like, was in a dunk contest level athlete shooting on that volume. Yeah, it's been insane. And so even if you lower the attempts to 6 a game there, the only guys who shoot that efficiently on that caliber of 3-point volume that are as tall as Trey Murphy are Cam Johnson, Kristaps Porzingis, DeAndre Hunter, and Michael Porter Jr. It's just,
okay. So just the best shooters in the NBA.
Yeah, you don't
naturally.
Guys that, like, when you look at rosters and you have like an established star on your team, all of those guys, you're like, damn, I would love to have like a Michael Porter Jr. on this team or whatever. It's just such an insane supplementary skill set. And when you look at I feel like he gets MPJ comps a lot. I feel like already insanely better defensively than Michael Porter Jr. Like much better on that end of the floor, but also a much more advanced ball handler, like you were talking about. Like, we've just gotten to the point where Michael Porter Jr. can like kind of attack closeouts and do like a pull-up free throw line jumper instead of like a just normal catch and shoot three. But Trey Murphy can attack closeouts, get all the way to the rim, and like make plays for others. Like, for a 23, 24-year-old player with this tool set, he's in a really, really good spot. And the New Orleans Pelicans should be super happy.
Yeah, like once the Pelicans are good again next year, hopefully, and like have recalibrated their team, figured out how they want to play, who's going to remain, who's going to be shipped out, and they can, if they ever have a healthy stretch of Zion Williamson, playing Zion Williamson basketball, doing the effective things, which he is doing this year. He should be said he's having an underrated stretch lately. He's averaging like 30 points per 36 minutes. He's just not playing full-time yet. Once that becomes winning basketball again, and you have to deal with the downhill just jackhammer of Zion, and you have this new version of Trey who's fully fleshed out, can do more creation, there's going to be a lot of opportunities for it to attack 4-on-3 defenses because people have to commit multiple bodies to Zion. Trey's going to have the perfect skill set to slide into those crevices and attack the rim, use the shooting to draw those already few amount of defenders out. Like, you said it best. You cannot imagine a more complimentary player to a slasher like Zion.
Yeah. And I would also like the way last season when the Memphis Grizzlies were decimated by injuries, the way that season really ended up benefiting Jaren Jackson Jr. and we're seeing such a solid on-ball year from him this year. I feel like we might see a lesser but similar jump from Trey Murphy next year, where he spends this entire year, in the fire or whatever, just fucking like he's in hell and he has to get through it and he has to dribble the basketball and the team's bad and it doesn't matter. But it comes out on the other side of that a much improved, much more reliable shot creator while still being one of the best catch and shoot players in the entire league. It's literally... He's 43% on 6 catch and shoot attempts per game now this season, which is only matched by Malik Beasley and Derek White. And he is like I mean, the gravity of the guys he's playing off of when Zion's not out there, it's not good. Like your DeJounte Murray, shout out. I mean, rest in peace to the Achilles and everything. CJ McCollum, there's not like a super crazy like rim pressure guy to open him up for these catch and shoot threes. He's just one of the best in the league at hitting them.
Yeah.
So it's sweet.
Man, this next year, Dylan Harper, Trey Murphy, Herb Jones, Zion Williamson, Missy, mountains will be moved.
Yeah, it's so funny thinking about the Ingram thing, just because it's like two sides of the spectrum where it's like, all right, we have like the tough twos, all-star-ish level guy that we're just not sure what to make of, and then we have a guy who just does all like the supplementary stuff. I'd much rather be playing this guy instead of this guy, and so I'm glad they figured that out. I hope Ingram figures it out in Toronto, but I'm excited for next year.
The breakup is good for everybody, especially Trey Murphy, who number one on our list. Yeah, man, that's our list. I think it's a nice combination of different variety of players. I'm sure some people will say, why'd you include these stars? Because I wanted to talk about them. Because I think they're better than you do. Sorry.
Exactly. Yeah, you're dumb. I mean, really, that's the big takeaway from this. Every time we say a name and you're like, what? Take a look in the mirror, take a deep breath, and be like, I don't know what I'm talking about. These guys are so smart.
I don't know what I'm talking about. If people are still here, comment Austin Reaves is your savior. And we'll see you all next week.
Whoa.